Over the years, I had only made three brief trips to Iloilo, and that was just for a couple of days. But recently, my wife and I spent a week in Iloilo as part of our roaming vacation throughout the Philippines, partly to just get out of the house and partly to kind of look at possible locations that we may want to settle down in sometime in the future. So we spent a week there in Iloilo, and you can only do so much in a week, but we did get a pretty good feel for it. So I'll share with you some of my observations and why specifically my wife and I probably will not be settling down in Iloilo, even though it may be the perfect choice for other people. Now, the interesting thing is that Iloilo is somewhat off the beaten path. Not entirely, but if you look at the map of the Philippines and the places where most expats tend to travel, there's what I've called the expat path. And it is a vertical path that goes from Manila down towards Leyte, then to Cebu City and those surrounding areas such as Mactan and Bohol. Then you go further south again and you find the whole Dumaguete, Valencia area, which many expats will visit. Some stay, some don't. And then continuing south, there is Davao. So this is what I call the expat path. This is where most of the expats tend to vacation or even settle down. Whereas if you look at the map, Iloilo is far to the west. Now, it's easy to get to. You can hop a flight straight there from Cebu City. But again, because most guys are interested in that vertical path, they don't want to divert out to Iloilo so much. Many do, but not the majority. And so the first thing you'll notice in Iloilo is that you will see far less expats as you go about the malls and moving about. For some people, that's a good thing. They want to be more immersed among Filipino people. They really didn't come here to hang out with other expats. So that's a plus if that's your mindset. The other plus is that, as I've mentioned many times before, when you're in a city that does not have very many expats, you stand out as a bit more of a hot commodity. Local Filipinas are curious about you and more open to go out, even though that they're still open to go out with a foreigner anywhere in the Philippines. In cities where there are a lot of expats, the enthusiasm may be curbed a bit because they know that if they turn you down, well, there's another expat right down the block. But in Iloilo, you kind of have that going for you. You will stand out and probably have an easier time in the dating realm. Now that kind of segues into dating in general in Iloilo. What I noticed is that Iloilo is probably a much more upscale city, even more so, I would say, than Cebu City. What I notice is that many of the young Filipinas, many of them, seem to be from upper middle class families who are going to university. And my wife and I noticed that, say, for instance, Kenny Rogers, we were having lunch there, and I would say that it was fairly busy. They were running at about 70% capacity. And I would say that about 20% of their customers were local, either high school or college Filipinos and Filipinas that were coming into the Kenny Rogers with a GCash card and ordering up their lunch. Now, this is something you really don't see that much in other smaller cities or even in Cebu City. You'll see them at Jollibee's and you'll see them at McDonald's where it's a bit cheaper to get some lunch. But you can also tell just by the amount of jewelry they tend to wear, the casual clothes when they're not in their school uniform. Most of the Filipinas you're going to run into are going to be from these upper middle class families. Now, your mileage may vary, but in general, these kind of Filipinas, their family is not going to be so enthusiastic about her dating a foreigner. in general. That's not to say that it can't be done. It's just that the family's opinion of her dating an expat is going to factor in to whether or not she actually has a relationship with you. But not every Filipina in Iloilo comes from an upper middle class family. There are still all the Filipinas who work as cashiers in the supermarkets or the food kiosks, the Filipinas that need to earn a living because they don't come from a somewhat affluent family. So again, your mileage may vary depending on which Filipinas you're deciding to ask out and what it is really you have in mind for yourself as far as what kind of Filipina you want to spend a lot of time with. Now, the other thing that I noticed is that because Iloilo is a more upscale city, and by that I mean there's a little more emphasis on art, expensive coffee. You may be familiar with Maslow's law of priorities. And a society or even a person only has time for the arts and creativity and philosophy when the other needs have been met. For air and food and water and housing. Only after those things have been met does a society start then getting into these other areas. It's a luxury. And cities that are, or persons who are struggling just to put rice on the table, they don't necessarily have time to hang out in an expensive coffee shop pondering philosophy. Now, in Iloilo, you will find a lot of this. I found some very nice coffee shops. I even found a keto restaurant called House of Monkeys that I enjoyed so much. It was the first time I'd ever found a keto restaurant in the Philippines. I ate there like 4 times during the week we were there. Very good food, by the way. But by upper scale, I also mean a higher cost of living. You can expect the rents to be a bit higher. And normally, my wife and I cook at home like 95% of the time. We only dine out usually 3 times a month. But since we're on vacation and we want to try restaurants that we don't always have access to, we spent the week going out to a variety of restaurants. Now, on the high end, we went to a Vietnamese restaurant, just the 2 of us, and the total bill was just under $30. We went to another place and just got kind of a regular meal, just sort of like American type food, and that was still over $20. Whereas in Bohol or Cebu City or Dumaguete, 2 persons can still go out and have a decent dinner for about $12, $14. Even less if you're just eating something really simple. So expect that rents will be a little bit higher in Iloilo. Dining out, you will have more choices of more restaurants. And I have to say, the service was overall much better in Iloilo than what I've experienced in other cities. But of course, all this comes at a price. So if you're looking for a budget-conscious place, Iloilo is probably not going to fit that criteria for you. On the other hand, if money really is not an issue for you, then you're going to find Iloilo to have a wide variety of food and entertainment that isn't going to really mess with your larger budget. And this leads me to the other observation we made, which was confirmed when we spent the week there. Previously, before arriving, I had looked at the satellite map on Google and took a look at the perimeter of the actual city, and it's pretty big. It's a very big footprint. It's not a tiny town like, say, for instance, Tagbilaran, where you can 10 minutes out of the center of the city be back in the province. Iloilo City is a bit larger, and so if your desire, such as for my wife and I, is to live 10, 15 minutes out of the center of the city so that you're enjoying the province life, but you have quick access to everything the city has to offer, to go from the center of the city to the perimeter, that alone is going to take you 15, 20 minutes. And then you're going to go another 10, 15 minutes into the province. So you're basically going to look at living about 30 minutes from the center of Iloilo City, where everything is that you want to enjoy. Now, maybe that's fine for you. You don't mind that distance. But if you want to have quick access to what the city has to offer, then you're going to probably want a smaller place like, say, Tagbilaran, where you can, again, be back in the middle of the city within 7 minutes or back in the province very quickly. So overall, what is my impression of Iloilo City? It's a very nice, upscale, clean city that appeals mostly to people who are city people. If you don't mind eventually settling down into, say, a gated community or a condo complex, if you don't mind that, if that's actually what you prefer, I think you'll be very happy and pleased with Iloilo. But if what you want is to live in the province and hop into the city, for my wife and I, we just found that the distance was more than we wanted to deal with. It really all comes down to what you're looking for as a lifestyle. So feel free to share in the comments your impressions of Iloilo if you've been there, with regard to the housing, the cost of living, and the dating options you ran into.